Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar of the ASEAN ADBI webinar on the creative economy for sustainable development, potential challenges, and way forward. This webinar is a collaboration between the ASEAN Secretariat and also the Asian Development Bank Institute. My name is Pichaya Sirimunabut. I'm a capacity building and training economist from ADBI. I will be the MC for this webinar. To start the webinar, allow me just to give you the house rules. For the panelists or the speaker, please keep your microphone on and video on, and mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you have a question, you can type it in the Q&A box below the Zoom program. Chat with the host or other participant also allowed at the chat box. Raise your hand once you want to speak directly to the host or to the presenter. You can also share your own screen by using the share screen icon. Please select the individual application like PowerPoint presentation or the PDF and select the slideshow mode. Once you finish your presentation, please use stop share from your screen, and then we go back to the normal speaker screen. For the attendees, there will be no video or audio for you, but if you have a question, you can do the same thing by type your question in Q&A box. Also, if you want to chat with the host or other participant, you can also do so. Raise your hand if you want to discuss something directly with the host or the presenter. So right now, I would like just to welcome everyone and go to the opening remarks. We have an honor to welcome His Excellency Khun Pong, the Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN for the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community, or ASCC, to give us the welcoming remarks. He has been the DSG from ASCC ASEAN since 2018 and provide leadership in implementing the ASCC blueprint. Before joining the ASEAN Secretariat, DSG Khun was the Undersecretary of the State at the Office of the Council of Ministers of the Royal Government of Cambodia and was working on the foreign policy in the Office of the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Cambodia. He is the Grand Cross of the Royal Order of Cambodia, as well as the co-founder of the Cambodia Institute of Strategic Study. DSG Khun, I would like just to give the floor to you, please, sir.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pichaya, for your kind introduction. And a very good afternoon to all distinguished guests and panelists, to everyone joining us virtually today. It is with great pleasure that I join all of you today for this webinar on creative economies for sustainable development, potential challenges and ways forward. My sincere appreciation goes to the Asian Development Bank Institute for partnering with us at the ASEAN Secretariat in organizing this webinar. Despite the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm pleased that we are gathering here today to exchange idea to better position the creative economy for post-COVID-19 recovery and sustainable development. Allow me to begin by providing some context and observation on how COVID-19 has affected the creative economy sector in the ASEAN regions. The fourth industrial revolution presents a shift from an industrial to a knowledge economy where creativity and innovation become critical capital for sustained growth. Representing both commercial and cultural value, creative industry are a key force in entrepreneurship and innovation as it provides new economic opportunities, foster local ownership, and can generate incomes through trade and intellectual property rights. While the uptick in digital adoption in many sectors has created new forms of social and economic opportunity, especially for small and medium-sized cultural and creative enterprises, the COVID-19 pandemic has also resulted in loss of income and livelihood for numbers of key industries within the creative economy. Key economic sectors have been affected, in particular sector in the creative economy, such as cultures and the arts, travel, tourism, and associated industry. Globally, growth has shrunk in 2020 and is expected to leave lasting scar through an erosion of human capital because of lost work and schooling, higher poverty rate as the most vulnerable slip back into a pocket of chronic poverty, and macroeconomically have resulted in lower investment and fragmentation of global trade and supply linkages. While economic forecasts for 2021 are cautiously positive, the recovery to pre-COVID level GDP will take time. Given the travel restriction all around the world, service sectors and those associated with travel and the tourism industry affected by global and domestic movement restriction are likely to remain the hardest hit in the near future. Furthermore, many of those working in the creative sector in the gig economies, which many are freelancer, self-employed, and are on short-term contract, which made it especially challenging for them without the usual safety net of full-time employment. On a more positive note, the pivot toward digital adoption among creative industry players during the lockdown in cities worldwide are creating new opportunity that can be tapped on as we adjust to the new normal. For example, we see encouraging signs of museums, art, and cultural events going virtual in innovative and immersive ways. Ladies and gentlemen, again, this backdrop now allow me to share ASEAN efforts to facilitate the recovery and promotion of the creative economy, as well as potential entry point we may consider to further enhance our efforts. Firstly, cognizant of the lasting impacts of the crisis may have on our people, ASEAN has adopted the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, which demonstrate the importance of a whole of ASEAN approach to ensure that the region is better positioned to withstand and recover from the negative impact of this pandemic and other crises that may emerge in the future. The creative economy is duly recognized in the framework as an important driver that can aid regional recovery. Targeted activity we are aiming for are to better promote our creative industry, foster greater digital adoption, as well as create and support a robust ecosystem where small, micro, medium enterprises can flourish and become financially sustainable. ASEAN has also been pivoting toward digital adoption for the culture and the art sector. For example, we are working regionally to make use of digital technology such as virtual reality to promote the tangible and intangible cultural heritage of ASEAN. We have digitally archived cultural treasure of ASEAN online through a dedicated website where visitors can view artifacts three-dimensionally. And we have also captured the UNESCO ASEAN Heritage Site using virtual reality as well. Likewise, we convene the small, medium creative enterprise caravan, where ASEAN artisans and administrators exchange ideas to foster a more vibrant creative economy. This example provides impetus for learning and exchanges of ideas to encourage more enterprises to pivot toward innovation and digital adoption as part of the push for promoting the creative economy. Second, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has created an uptick in the digital activity of our citizens. In the region, we spend about 6 hours on average in the internet, and this has led to the revenue boom in web-based industry. Take, for example, the online entertainment and media industry, which is a significant contributor to the creative economy, where over the top media services are growing steadily in terms of users and revenue. A recent Bloomberg report noted that OTT streaming revenue in Asia Pacific, excluding China, will more than double to 15 billion by 2025. Furthermore, we are seeing unprecedented increase in online shopping. Research from Google, Temasek Holdings, and Bain & Company predict that online shopping will hit 172 billion by 2025. In the ASEAN region, online marketplaces such as Lazada and Shopee have allowed small, medium creative enterprise to reach a wider market. Building up our creative entrepreneurs to pivot toward greater digital adoption will be an important priority, as doing so not only generate economic opportunity, but it will also promote greater inclusive growth. Thirdly, we should explore alternative financing to provide support to our creative entrepreneurs. Public financing has traditionally been a source of funding for small, medium creative enterprises. However, with several developmental challenges that our government face, public financing for small, medium creative enterprise have been fairly limited. With limited financing option, the financial sustainability of this industry remains weak. However, in recent years, venture capitalism and crowdfunding could become viable sources of growth for creative startup. While we promote harness and reap the benefit of the creative economy, we should not forget responsible and sustainable consumption. There's a need to intensify our efforts in mainstreaming circular economy, especially into the formulation of a post-COVID-19 economic recovery plan. Finally, all of this recommendation can only be made possible if we create and foster an environment supported by suitable physical infrastructure that allows for innovation, creative thinking, and new ways of learning, while at the same time adaptable to the continuously changing landscape. The physical connectivity needed to facilitate the growth of the digital creative economies needs to be in place to ensure that no one is left behind. The skilling and reskilling of our citizens to better adapt to the digital disruption should be addressed, and new learning modality for our youth and support for our elderly should be explored as well. This can only be achieved if we work together with various stakeholders, both from the private and public sectors. So today's discussion is timely as the potential contribution of the creative economy to our economic growth and to our people's well-being is immense. So I look forward to today's discussions and our changes on way forward to support and develop the creative economies. I wish everyone a productive and fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. Back to you, Ms. Chaya.
Thank you very much, DSG Kong, for your opening remark and sharing the ASEAN initiative and plan with us. In complement to that, we would like just to quickly show the 3-minute videos from ASEAN creative economy. Next, I would like just to invite the Deputy Dean of ADBI to give opening remarks. Dr. Seng Chu Beck has joined ADBI since March this year. Prior to joining the ADBI, he served as the Deputy Minister for Planning and Coordination at the Ministry of Economy and Finance of the Republic of Korea. He has 30 years of economic and development policy experience. His other previous role includes serving as a senior policy analyst focused on developing countries for the OECD, as well as international development expert at the World Bank Institute. Didi Beck, may I give the floor to you?
Thank you, Tuchaya. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Seung Ju Baek, Deputy Dean of the ADBI. It is my honor to extend my warmest welcome to all presenters and the participants from various ASEAN and ADB member countries, research institutions, academia, and other stakeholders, our partners from ASEAN Secretariat, and my ADBI colleagues. I'd like to express my appreciation to H. Kung Poa, Deputy Secretary General of the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community, for excellent collaboration on the arrangement of this webinar on creative economy for sustainable development. It is with much enthusiasm that we are gathered here to tackle prevailing issues on creative economy in a crucial time when global economy is being mostly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. This webinar is founded on the issues related to the fourth industrial revolution, which is characterized by the transformation of many biological processes into technological processes such as AI, IoT, and other real-time data systems that certainly affect the relationship between productivity and the human labor force. The first industrial revolution thus caused the shift from an industrial to a digital economy where creativity and innovation are critical factors for sustainable growth. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development declares 2021 as the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. This could not be more appropriate to appreciate creative economy after the years of pandemic-induced lockdowns. The creative economy accounts for about 3% of global GDP, while developing economies' participation in creative goods trade was higher than in developed economies. The UNCTAD report on the creative economy indicates that PRC, South and Southeast Asia are among the largest shares of creative goods exports from the developing countries. These countries include Hong Kong, India, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Taipei, China. COVID-19 has hit the creative economy hard as the industry employs more than 30 million people globally, mostly young people. In 2020, the UN estimates the global film industry has lost $7 billion in 11 years. Against this backdrop, this webinar will serve as a platform to review the potential growth of the creative industries in Asia and the Pacific region by using case studies in the ASEAN, such as Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, and the Philippines, as well as to tackle the challenges that confront them during the COVID-19 pandemic. It also aims to facilitate better knowledge sharing through enhanced networks among field experts, policymakers, and creative entrepreneurs to bring up sound and sustainable policy recommendations for developing countries to support and foster the growth of creative and cultural industries to contribute to sustainable development. After this event, I hope that the knowledge and the experience cultivated on this platform can be taken as a part of comprehensive policy recommendations for policy designs that will nurture creative industries in ASEAN towards sustainable development. In closing, I reiterate that it is my hope that this webinar can help us address the challenges that the current COVID-19 pandemic has posed on the creative economy, and together as a part of Asia Pacific, work together with each other to strengthen both internal and external networks among policymakers, think tanks, and academic and other stakeholders to address this situation. Without further ado, I gladly open this webinar, and I hope that we'll all have a fruitful time exchanging and challenging ideas with each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Dean Beck. The next, before we go to the next section, I would like just to request all the presenter and also the speaker just to turn on your camera quickly for the photo group photo. When you're ready, on my count, please. 1, 2, 3, smile. We get one more just in case. 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you very much. And now we would like just to go to on the first section, which is a topic on the creative industry in ASEAN and potential for sustainable development. We have an honor to welcome Dr. Seo Nakajima, the professor of Sociology and Asian Study at the Graduate School of Asian Pacific Study, Waseda University. Professor Nakajima has his research interest on the Chinese film industry as well as study of popular culture in Asia, particularly in the transnational flows and interaction of popular culture among various regions. He is now embarking on a new project on the socio-technical analysis of the self-driving and autonomous driving technologies, as well as serving as the director of the Research Institute of Automobile and Parts Industry, Waseda University. Nakajima Sensei, I just give the floor to you. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks so much. Yeah, so I would like to share my PowerPoint, so we'll do that.
Yes, please.
So can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
Look
All right.
perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Okay. Yeah. So I will start. And first, I would like to thank ASEAN Secretary and also ADBI for supporting this very important event. And I'm looking forward to active discussion and engagement today. And my name is Seo Nakajima, and the title of my presentation today is Creative Industries in ASEAN and Potential for Sustainable Development. And I think there will be lots of case studies on Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thai. So today I would like to provide more the kind of general introduction to thinking about this topic in broad strokes, so we can discuss detailed case study that are to come in the later session of this seminar. Okay, so we'll be a little bit more broad introduction. And yeah, so today a little bit of definition of creative economy, creative industries, and also just one, very brief illustration of introduction to one phenomena that I found very interesting, interaction between ASEAN and Japanese music industry, and provide some conclusions. So first, definition of creative industry, because we'll be discussing this today, and I will not go over all the bullet points, but the first bullet point, the creative economy is in an evolving concept based on creative assets, potentially generating economic growth and development. And there are other aspects like social inclusion, particular innovation, multidisciplinary policy responses, and those things. But I would leave you to read this PowerPoint maybe later. And the important point is creative economy is more inclusive, or maybe the creative economy is the basically entire sphere of creative economic activities, including trade, like an interaction among different industries within creative economy. And what composes creative economy is what they call creative industries. So at the last bullet point, they say at the heart of the creative economy are the creative industries. So I will just move on to what we mean by creative industries, just as an introduction. And just to read very quickly, because I know I don't have much time. So creative industries are generally defined as industries such as advertising, architecture, art, computer games, crafts, cuisine, design, fashion, film, fragrance, music, performing arts, publishing, radio, TV, toys, and video games that are based on individual creativity, skill, and talent. So as UNCTAD definition of creative economy also says, it is based on this new ideas, not so much like producing more and more product in a massive scale, but really based on creativity, skill, and talent. And the second, and also another other important aspect would be they have the potential to create wealth and jobs because it's industry. It's not just artistic individual activity. Through developing intellectual property to protect and advance knowledge, skill, creative ideas, and also sometimes it is also called knowledge or information industry. Some people call this creative or cultural industry. Some people aesthetic industry, mixed industries. And another important point is it takes particular organizational forms and work patterns. So of course, we will be looking into in the later session of this webinar, how work patterns, career prospects, maybe organizational forms of different enterprises that participate in creative economy, creative industries differ from traditional manufacturing industries, and how we can think about the further developing this sector. These things would be probably the topics of discussion today. So just to summarize, creative economy is inclusive than creative industries. So creative industries are different specific sectors like music, and creative economy really talks about synergies between, say, music industry and tourism industry, and also trade and import and export among regions. For example, today's case in ASEAN and also beyond. And I think that definition would be very interesting. So if you are interested, you can look at this definition of creative economy, and also this Moreran and Alakoska's definition, where it would be very interesting working definition of creative industries. And also one thing we may want to take a note is creative industries overlap with other terms. Some people call it cultural industries, contents industries, knowledge industries. So you want to take note of this different terminology people use depending on different emphasis. Okay. And so, yeah, these are all kind of abstract discussions. So just taking maybe just a few minutes, I would like to introduce just one case because people will be talking more about concrete case studies. And this one is about a very interesting phenomena I just want to introduce very briefly. And I have to, I think, click this and maybe, yes, share. So I think you are now seeing the website. So this is the link, and very interesting phenomena. This person is, whose name is, of course, I think it's not real name, but Reinichi is an Indonesian singer, and she is actually, actually living in Sumatra Island and the province of Riau. And somehow, because of this digital economy, she found very interesting genre of music, Japanese popular music called city pop, which has been popular for the past 5 to 10 years. But because of this video by someone in Indonesia and in particular province of Riau, she cannot speak Japanese, but she learned just by listening through YouTube and other digital channels, video sharing sites, and sang the song in Japanese. And then kind of that made the popularity of this genre of music called city pop in Japan. Again, already it was popular, but resurgence even strengthened the popularity among Japanese people of this, older generation of music called city pop. So very interesting interaction between Indonesia and Japan. And of course, you may feel this is just a one minor person in somewhere in Indonesia singing and just fan cheering, but actually it also leads to industrial cooperation. And just I click this, and this is in Japanese, but I mean, you don't need to understand everything. Basically, this Reinichi, a person, right, kind of fan of Japanese music, who sang Japanese song without knowing Japanese and put it on YouTube, became popular and viral in Japan and all over the world. And now Japanese music production company Sony Music discovered her, and then she is now producing professional music in Japan, and also basically streaming and broadcasting this worldwide. So becoming a very interesting industrial phenomena. Okay. And okay, yeah, so that's one thing. And I will go back to my PowerPoint. Yeah, so one thing, yeah, so again, very interesting Indonesia-Japan interaction. And this has some implications for how we think about industrial development. And it's not about manufacturing economic development. It's not about promoting, Japanese music one way to the world, but more interactive. So we'll talk about that in the summary. Okay, so I think, yeah, I only have like a few minutes, so I will move on to the conclusions to open up for the detailed case studies in the December webinar. So 5 tentative final remarks. So again, as this webinar concept note mentions, worldwide 7% development over the last 13 years. So creative industries, creative economy is really becoming very, very important, especially with this rise of fourth industrial revolution. So digital economy. So again, creative economy, creative industry is becoming very, very important. That's the first point. And the second point is creative economy and creative industries rely on creative ideas as key source of value addition, value added. So they are generally conducive to sustainable development because their environmental footprint is relatively small. And, of course, making music may, have some environmental footprint, but if it is based on ideas, kind of interaction between Japan and Indonesian music industry, then is generally conducive to sustainable development. And just one point to note is I also study about automobile industry, which is traditional manufacturing industry. But as some of you know, even in ASEAN too, like Thailand and Vietnam, but now automobile is not for mass production, but you produce smaller number of automobile, but you use it as a service, like a mobility as a service, or this terminology, case connected autonomous sharing and services electric. So now people are trying to use not to mass manufacture the automobile and basically lots of environmental footprint, but putting an idea of maybe why don't we share one automobile depending on different time period with larger number of people. So again, creative economy, creative industry is very conducive to sustainable development. And just the 2 or 3 points, and I will end. And the third point is also may contribute to promoting social inclusion, cultural diversity, and human development. And old idea for creative economy industry is like soft power, saying selling Japanese anime to the world, like one-way flow of global culture flow. But now, as this Reinichi Indonesia Japan interaction shows, it's not about promoting Japan to Indonesia one way, but now fans of this Reinichi is interested in. So Indonesia, we did, many Japanese people didn't know about Indonesia much, but now there are many comments in SNS that they want to go to Sumatra Island, not just to Indonesia, but Sumatra Island, and particularly to this the province of Riau. And they found out there are different colleges, very interesting, good educational institutions. So some students just thinking, okay, maybe because I like this music, you may want to go to these places to study maybe Indonesian language or culture. So very interesting from kind of one way zero-sum international relations to transnational, decentralized transnational flows. So this is very important in creative economy and creative industry. And just 2 more points. And under COVID-19, people really realize the importance of cultural activity, which is basically very similar to what we call creative industries. Music doesn't help us like prevent infection from COVID-19, but without music, literature, sharing culture, probably it would it would have made us really difficult to survive this very difficult time period, COVID-19. So creative economy, creative industry is becoming more and more important in terms of values, kind of enriching human life and life quality. And also as people mentioned in the introduction, generally the digital resilience, relative resilience of creative industries, creative economy, especially with digitalization. So for example, live action film, TV drama, the production was stopped in many places, but anime or games, they could continue because they are digitally communicated, digitally produced. So that's also one aspect we could talk in the later session. And finally, challenges, and I mean, there are challenges too, and digital divide would be one. So of course, in this COVID-19, post-COVID-19, many digitally able sectors like internet, Netflix, like a YouTube, are thriving and surviving. On the other hand, like a small art house film theaters, maybe non-profit traditional performing arts organization, they are really very struggling, right? So there could be digital divide, and we need to think about how to solve this digital divide issue. And the one final point is, again, in this time, big companies like Netflix, maybe Sony producing anime, the movie, even now producing automobile, electric automobile, now thriving big media companies, while again, smaller and medium-sized enterprises like small art house film theaters may be having difficult times. So we really need to think about these divide in terms of digital and also sizes of the company. Okay, so there are challenges, and I think I used up more than my allocation of time. So I will end here, and I look forward to hearing other presenters' observations on more particular case studies of ASEAN countries. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nakajima Sensei, for laying the definition of creative economy for us, as well as giving a very interesting case study for the Indonesia singer. Next section will focus mainly on the ASEAN study cases, which will at the regional, and also we will go to country experience. I know we're running a little bit behind the schedule, but we hope that all the audience will stay with us until the end of the event. So please spare maybe 15 or 20 minutes more for us. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce the two speakers who will start the next section for us. They will focus on the topic of challenges faced by the creative industry in ASEAN. First is Dr. Upalat Gawathanasakun. He is a research fellow from United Nations University Institute for Advanced Study of Sustainability. He also an international development economist with the interest in a wide range of economic and social development topic in East and Southeast Asia. Along with Dr. Uparat, we will have Dr. Erika Paula Siosen to be the co-presenter for this section. Dr. Erika Siosen is a senior officer for culture and information under the Sustainable Development Directorate of the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community Department at the ASEAN Secretariat. She has more than 10 years of experience in international development and has worked for a development and research organization in Manila and also in Tokyo. She previously with the Japan International Cooperation Agency, Okata Research Institute, and also the Asian Development Bank Institute. I give the floor to Dr. Upalat to start the presentation.
So can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect, thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Upalat Gawathanasakun from the UNU. And first of all, Dr. Erika and I would like to express our gratitude to the organizers of today's webinar. It is our great pleasure to present our preliminary research on mapping the challenges to the creative economy in ASEAN. And this is the outline for today's presentation. So as it is commonly known, small and medium-sized enterprises or SMEs are significant contributors to economic activity and employment worldwide, and ASEAN is no exception. However, while acknowledging the potential value added and employment that can be contributed by SMEs, challenges abound. These challenges become more complicated when we zoom in on a particular sector, which is the creative sector that we are looking at today. Not all countries have the necessary institutions and framework to allow the growth of the sector. Lack of government support and lack of readiness of the market and financings are among the main challenges faced by the sector. If these issues are left unaddressed, the sector is unlikely to take advantage of the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution. Therefore, this research aims to provide a comprehensive review of the creative industries in ASEAN with specific focus given to small and medium creative enterprises, SMCEs, and then to explore the challenges faced by SMCEs in ASEAN, and lastly, to assert that the contribution of the SMCEs in sustainable development will become more substantial in the fourth industrial revolution, where innovation and creativity become key. Okay, then let's move to the next section on trends of the creative industry in ASEAN. According to global database of UNCTAD, world trade in creative goods reached $964 billion in 2015, which was more than double the value in 2002. China and the EU, particularly France, Italy, the UK, and Germany, equally dominate 2/3 of the world export market of creative goods, while ASEAN, accounting for 4%, is listed among the top 5 largest creative goods exporting countries. In line with the expansion of the world trade in creative goods, ASEAN's trade in creative goods had substantially grown over the period of 2003 to 2015 at the average annual growth rate of 11%. For the past decade, digital technology has been playing a significant role in the economy and affecting the trade structure of the creative industry. ASEAN's export structure of creative goods has been significantly relying on the design sector, constituting 3/4 of the total creative goods exports. Despite its strong dominance, the share of the design sector has been diminishing over time due to the emerging audiovisual sector and gradual development of the new media sector as the product of digital technology. And this table just summarizes the trends of the creative industry in each ASEAN member states. And as you can see from the table, like you can see the keywords for each member states. And because we don't have time much, so I would give this to the presenters like later, like on Indonesia and the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. And I would like to give this floor to Dr. Erika now.
Thank you, Dr. Palat. So in the remaining part of the presentation, given the time limit, we are going to specifically focus on the ecosystem readiness, because when we talk about mapping the challenges, there's just a host of challenges that really we have to address when it comes to the creative economy. But sorry if I'm looking at this slide because my notes are here. So my colleague has already presented the data, and perhaps together now we can infer the state of ecosystem readiness. What we mean here by ecosystem readiness is really market efficiency, and drawing from the framework of government interventions across the creative economic value chains done by the Boston Consulting Group. We note here that there are 4 factors that we are really looking at when it comes to ecosystem readiness. First is policy building, which is understandable. It pertains to the institutional frameworks that allow creative entrepreneurs to thrive. Second is sustainable financing, of course, a key ingredient for creative entrepreneurs and also for other entrepreneurs. Third is digital readiness, pertaining to both the physical and technological infrastructure available in the region, as well as the skills and use of digital tools. And finally, clustering, pertaining to concentrations of creative makers nationally and regionally. Next slide, please. So in terms of policy building, inclusion of creative economy and national strategies, as you have seen in the last slide that my colleague has presented, it has the inclusion of creative economy in national strategies has been done in some ASEAN countries, though we are seeing different levels of progress. Some are in the early stages of development, and as a result, there is really different level in the region. So those member states that do have national strategies pertaining to creative economy, they really have dedicated agencies and institutions that act as one-stop shops for SMCEs. And these one-stop shops are very important because they provide them information and finance, opportunities, incentives, among others. Next slide, next please. Yeah. So when it comes to sustainable financing, the SMCEs and ASEAN continue to rely on a mix of private and public financing. This is because of two things. First, the general perception of SMCEs in the literature is high risk for many private finance institutions. And second, particularly for SMCEs, especially in the culture and art sector, they often rely on personal financing and donation. So this can be attributed to the issue of, as I think also Dr. Nakajima already mentioned earlier, it's an issue of creativity versus profitability. So it has now, so that results to many of the SMCs, especially in the creative, in the culture and art sector, to really rely on private financing as well as donation. Public financing as well as donation. So this results to SMCEs in culture and art sector to be more likely to self-exclude financially. And in these instances is where we see that governments can really support by bridging the gap between SMCEs and the private sector. We also found that states with coherent and consolidated national strategies are able to provide more funding opportunities. So whether they be purely public or mixed financing. So take, for example, Singapore's National Arts Council that provides grants to artists, or Indonesia's Next Icorn. I'm not sure if this is still working, the Next Icorn platform, which was launched by the government and the private sector to fund startups. And Malaysia also has a number of grants under the Cradle Investment Program. And when we talk about digital readiness, we see that this remains uneven as well across the region, though in general, digital connectivity continues to improve. The fastest growing digital startups are hosted in the region, including e-commerce platforms as mentioned by DSG Kongfok, including Lazada, Shopee, Grab, and Gojek. And these platforms allow entrepreneurs in the region to reach a wider market, and use of digital financial services in the region is also on the rise, which in turn can make it easier for creative entrepreneurs to sell and receive payments for their goods and services. And finally, when it comes to clustering, we know from the literature why clustering is important. Clusters allow for risk to be distributed, cost to be reduced, and knowledge to be transferred. In the region, we are seeing that clustering is uneven. There are creative hubs. States with consolidated national strategies are fostering the development of creative hubs. So for instance, you would see creative hubs in Indonesia and in Singapore. These creative hubs are finding support from private sector, philanthropic networks, and venture capitalists. One trend that we are seeing now is impact investing becoming a source of funding for creative hubs. This is because of the inherent nature of creative industries being that they can be both for profit as well as for social impact. So lastly, we see that social media platforms become a popular way for creative makers, creative hubs and spaces to promote their activities, to market and to network. And the popularity of social media platforms, specifically Instagram, have really allowed creative makers to access a wider group of audience and to break into potential markets. Next slide, please. And this is our final slide. We conclude that to facilitate the ecosystem readiness, governments have roles to play in building an ecosystem where creative makers can thrive. There is a need for more consolidated definition of the creative economy to fully understand its contribution to socioeconomic growth. Therefore, mapping studies are needed. We see from our own research, this is ongoing research, that there is still data, that there is still a lack of data when it comes to this sector, to this industry. To understand the needs of creative makers and to foster the growth of creative hubs and clusters, needs assessment or data collection is necessary. And finally, and the most important for us, is that capacity building for creative entrepreneurs in terms of financing, financial education, business pitching and planning, marketing and branding. These are all very important to help them thrive in a very digital age. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Uparat and Dr. Siosen, for your comprehensive presentation given a very short time. The next presenter, we have an honor just to invite Mr. Joshua Simajuntak from Indonesia. He is the senior advisor to the Minister of Innovation and Creative Economy. Before he joined taking this role, he's graduated from the Royal College of the Arts in London and worked within the industry design for Tom Dixon. When he returned to Indonesia, he set up an industry design studio called Casa Design, and then serving the Indonesian Agency for Creative Economy as deputy for marketing. Papa Joshua, may I give the floor to you to present the Indonesian case for us?
Yes, thank you very much. If you don't mind, I can share from my screen.
Of course.
Is it okay?
Yes,
if
sure.
I can, it's easier for me to skip.
Yes, you can share by yourself. Go ahead, please.
Okay, there you go. There you go. So we can see it, right? Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, let's start. So good afternoon, ladies, all the audience, for arranging this webinar and having us to share some points for discussion on Indonesia's creative economy, mainly during the pandemic, for its potential, challenges, and way forward. So allow me to start the presentation. Well, basically, the presidency is very supportive on the development of the creative economy, and really understand that the creative economy is one of the soft power that the Indonesia have to develop. And in 2019 is the first time Indonesia have the law of creative economy. So we have a constitution that the umbrella for the creative economy, and I think we are one of the few countries that have a law for creative economy. I just go quickly. So as you can see, this is the growth of of the GDP for economy to the national GDP. As you can see, it's growing and quite giving a significant to the national, and how much that increased in creative workforce in Indonesia. So as you can see, this is a growing potential, growing sector in Indonesia, the creative economy. Now, I'd like to focus on the highlight on time to recover for the COVID-19 pandemic. So basically, we have three strategy to recover from the pandemic, on specifically on the creative economy sector. First is the managing the crisis and mitigating the impact. So how we're looking, this is at the beginning of the pandemic, where we see all the changes and how do we deal with that. And then the second is to accelerate and stimulus for recovery, and how do we can incentivize the creative industry to recover. And the third one is creating added value for future. So during the pandemic is the right time to actually putting up effort to create an added value, which when the pandemic is post-pandemic, we are still ready to the creative industries is still survive. Yeah. So I go quickly again. Now, the new minister comes up with a more strategic and practical approach for this recovery of the pandemic, which there are three of them: is adaptation, collaboration, and innovation. So during the pandemic, we see there's a rapid changing in the technology, how people use technology, and the lifestyle is changing. Like what we're doing now, we're doing a global, I can say like a regional or global webinar, which hardly ever happened before the pandemic. And also we're looking at the new market, which emerging during the pandemic. So there's a new habit, which we as a government, we identify that there is needs for the creative sector to adapt in order to survive. And then we see more and more collaboration in the creative industry. And not only the community, but also the media, the business, even the government, they collaborate to survive, basically. And especially in the creative sector, we see how fashion, music, all the sector collaborate, and this is what we encourage to have more and more collaboration. It creates larger market, more opportunities, and greater impact. And the third one is innovation. Again, during the pandemic, it's a hard time. Everyone they have challenges, and it creates more innovation. And this is what we also push the innovation in order to solve various problems in the market, in the social and the economics issue. Next one is, okay, now I'd like to go through quickly to the case study. So I start with the case study and how actually we do this adaptation, collaboration, and innovation. So as we can see, there's an emerging market. Actually, during the pandemic, the e-commerce transaction is increasing. Like, people are just buying everything online, which means that there is this huge opportunities and market which rising during the pandemic, which the creative industry, the SMEs in the creative industry, not yet make the most of it. So we have this program. Hold on. We have this program called Bangga Buatan Indonesia, which is actually, oh sorry, this is the old one. Anyway, Bangga Buatan Indonesia is mainly proudly made in Indonesia. So this is a program to shift from to create an onboarding, shift the SMEs, they are offline, to go online. So we have programs to help them to transform their businesses to adapt in the new market. So we have all these programs here. There are 6 programs. We have more actually programs, which helps the creative sector to go to onboarding. Now, on top of that, on this program, Bangga Buatan Indonesia, or Proudly Made in Indonesia, is actually a government strategic program, which actually helps the money. Actually, when you buy local product, the money will go back into the national economic. So the economic will start turning back. So this is what we encourage through this program. So we have 5.3 million SMEs now have transforming into the onboarding into the digital e-commerce. And on top of that, we these are some numbers to see the growth and everything. And now we are also putting effort for the consumers, incentive for the consumers to buy more local creative products by offering discounts and also free delivery. I think that's the right word. Yes, free posting, free delivery for local creative products. So we are hoping that this effort will create a new turning wheels, yes, on the economic, especially in the creative sector. So this is the contribution of during the pandemic. It's 1.1 trillion rupiah, and again 52 Asian e-commerce from the Focus Economic Outlook. E-commerce transaction is from Indonesia equal to 112.2 billion. So these are the area that we're hoping by doing this strategy, we can help the creative industry, the creative economy sector survive throughout the pandemic. This is just one of the case that I can present to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Joshua, for your comprehensive presentation. The next presenter, I would like just to invite our presenter from the Philippines to share the Philippines experience. Mr. Paulo Mercado, he's the president and the founder of the Creative Economy Council of the Philippines. It's a think tank group that is advocating for the recognition of the creative industry as the country's next economic growth driver. The council works closely with the creative industry, government agency, and academy to drive a creative economy roadmap, including policy and the mapping incentive and other related matters. I would like just to invite Paulo, and because we learning a lot of behind the schedule, please strictly keep your time at 8 minutes, please. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. So let me just call up my presentation. If you could confirm that you can see it.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So I will share the Philippine experience regarding the creative industries, talk about the disruption and recovery and rebound. So a quick slide, just one page on the last estimates prior to the COVID crisis. So the value of Philippine creative industries was estimated to be between 6.5% to 7% of GDP. This estimate was done actually, the data is quite old from 2012, but it's the most comprehensive data that we have. And it only estimates the copyright-based industries, and it doesn't include heritage and gastronomy, which, as we know from the estimates from our neighboring countries, can be quite large contributors as well. In terms of employment, only for the formal sector, in that same study, it was about less than 1 million, but there are projected counts in terms of freelancers for local work to be about 2 to 3 million freelancers supporting the formal sector. And then there's also another sector, which are the online freelance workers based in the Philippines, but who do international work. And that's estimated to be about 1.5 million people. In terms of trade, we are number 5 in ASEAN in total creative exports. That's goods and services, where we're only at about 4 billion. This was the UNCTAD report 2018. But surprisingly, the Philippines is number 1 in terms of creative services. So the majority of our creative exports is actually in creative services, primarily digital creative services. In terms of governance, this is also an area where the Philippines is lagging behind. While there's been a lot of effort recently in getting our creative economy agenda more organized, as of yet, we do not have a formal creative economy agency nor officially adopted creative economy development plan. So that's a snapshot of the Philippines, just a few details on this one. So what you can see here is a report that I said where you could see that the estimate that was done in 2012 was done by the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines following the World Intellectual Property Office organization framework of core copyright-based industries, interdependent and partial copyright-based industries. And this is the one where the census of Philippine business and industries, the contribution of the sectors was 6.5%. But it doesn't include the very large heritage and gastronomy sectors, and it doesn't include the informal sectors of freelancers. But the Philippines also is known for, let's say, very iconic world-class talent. So some of them in the areas especially of performing arts and in the areas of animation. So we do have several Filipinos who are really world-class. On Broadway, not only Lea Salonga, the first Miss Saigon, but you have Eva Noblezada and John Briones, who currently, well, until the pandemic, have been really in-demand performers on Broadway. And then in Disney, you have these names there that are still today very valuable contributors to Disney films and now also into other titles as well. And this is the one that I was mentioning earlier. So those are, let's say, the stars, the creative stars that we have. But very active in the Philippines is also online freelancing, where PayPal estimated there to be about 1.5 million Filipino online freelancers who do work for clients that are overseas. And in the study alone of Odesk and Elance, which is now Upwork, The United States is their biggest freelance population, but followed by the United States, it's actually the Philippines, with about 1.3 million registered freelancers on their platform. So this was the Philippines prior to the creative disruption of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in various discussions and in various ways, I would say that everybody has been affected, but they've been affected in different ways. Some of them, the disruption was mainly because they couldn't supply their markets, and others because there was no demand or there was a collapse in demand for their products and services. So this is just a very quick chart where the bottom right are those that are least affected. Some of them have been affected, but they're least affected by the pandemic. And in fact, some of them are returning to growth as of this moment. So digital creative services and digital content, these are in a, let's say, faster recovery and growth mode. In the mid-range, you have broadcast, advertising, you have books and press, lifestyle design and architecture, mainly because on the one hand, advertising, there have been many businesses that have been disrupted, so they're not advertising anymore. Unique to the Philippines, one of the TV stations has been closed for political reasons, and that has removed a very large platform in the broadcast media sector. Architecture, commercial establishment, commercial real estate is very slow, but residential real estate is still growing right now. In fact, a lot of in-home renovations for, let's say, for a work from home setup. But finally, you have these sectors, primarily the live performance sectors, the cinema-based movies or films, and then you have sectors related to tourism for folk arts and crafts, visual arts and paintings for private collection, and then some of the media. So these are where they have experienced a dramatic reduction and disruption of their business model. Some of them earning practically zero versus their income prior to the pandemic. And in which case, the recovery plans for them that are being developed sector by sector in road mapping work are quite different. For those that are in the digital services, the name of the game is these sectors are growing, and it's been mentioned by the other presenters. So how can the Philippine creative industries involved in digital accelerate their growth? Not just survive the crisis, but how can we become a really go-to market for digital services or content services? For the ones in the middle, it's about how do they adapt their operations to better improve to improve delivery and meet demand that's still there. So the demand is still there, but somehow they're not able to respond as quickly to what the market needs. And in the last set, these guys are the most challenged because they literally have to reinvent their business model. I will talk very briefly on performing arts. A lot of people say that, oh, performing arts should go digital. That's easier said than done. It's easy to film performing arts, but you will not pay $500, $200 to $500 to see a recorded show. You know, you would pay that for a live show. You would not pay more than $20 to watch a Broadway play online. That's the truth. So and it's the same experience. I'm using Broadway as an example, but in the Philippines, same thing. It's $100 to watch live theater, and people will not pay more than $5 to watch it online. So it's a challenge of business model for these groups, and nobody has the answer at this point. I would say one very good light at the end of the tunnel right now is that there's much more attention among our lawmakers to really galvanize and push forward a creative industries development plan. And this is now being put forward as a new bill on the National Creative Industries Development Program, where a bill has been filed in Congress and the Senate, and where there will be a high-level creative economy council that will be established, composed of both government officials and representatives of the 9 creative industry sectors. A permanent council will be established, and several instruments in terms of incentives and financing are being put in place to help the creative industries not only survive the crisis for those that are in dire need, but also for the others to take advantage and grow even during this time of crisis. So that's what I have to share, and thank you very much again for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Paulo, for your insight about the Philippines strategy and also the policy related to the creative economy during this crisis time too. And the next presenter will be the presenter from Singapore, Mr. Mark V. He's an executive director for the Design Singapore Council, or the DSG. He leads the council in driving the implementing national policy on design as DSG continue on its Design 2025 journey. He also a design veteran with wide industry connection that laid the groundwork for the council plan to grow Singapore design brand overseas. I would like just to invite Mark just to give the presentation on Singapore country case. And I would also like just to inform all the speaker that there's some question in the Q&A box, and it seems likely that we will have to shorten the Q&A section. So if you have the chance, please look at the Q&A box and answer it directly to the box. Mark, please, I give the floor for you. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, hello everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Thanks for having me. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mark from the Design Singapore Council. We are the National Agency for Design, and we were established in 2003 to develop Singapore's design sector. Actually, to be honest, we sit under the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and we are the agency driving Singapore's vision to be an innovation-driven economy and a lovable city by design. Here, we actually are guided by a master plan. You can find it. It's publicly available online. It's called the Design 2025. Our work actually centers around 3 areas: helping organizations and companies to use design as a strategy for growth, nurturing design talent and a design-minded workforce, and building the Singapore design brand locally and internationally. In 2015, Singapore was conferred the UNESCO City of Design, and our council is the main touch point for the UNESCO network. And I just want to thank you, ASEAN and ABDI, for inviting us to this conference. It is really especially an exciting moment and very timely to talk about the creative economy given the disruptions and innovations that has gone through in the past year. First, we've been asked by our organizers to actually provide a landscape of the creative economy in Singapore and in terms of the institutions driving it. So this slide would hopefully help you understand. Broadly, Singapore's creative economy is driven by different public agencies, often working closely and collaboratively together. Our digital media and film industries are developed by the Infocom Media Development Authority under the Ministry of Communication and Information. Our performing, visual, and literary arts are championed by the National Arts Council. Our national museums, monuments, heritage sites, and heritage institutions come under the custodianship of the National Heritage Board. And these agencies work closely with the Ministry of Culture that funds our major cultural institutions, such as the National Gallery and Esplanade. And of course, I'm here representing the Design Singapore Council, which advocates for the design sector. In recent years, we've actually taken steps to grow our creative economy by cultivating the right environment for the creative industries. A cohesive and welcoming multicultural society feels very important, strong intellectual property laws to protect ideas, and a robust climate for creative businesses and entrepreneurship. And these represent a decade-long effort by the government to make the country a sweet spot for creative canvases. Singapore has also become an Asia HQ of choice to home a regional HQ or launchpad for global brands and players, East and West, and these are just some of the names here. And hand in hand with our economic approach, we also recognize the importance of the creative sector in contributing to the resilience and lovability of Singapore and building social capital for the country and strengthening ties amongst fellow citizens. So we have also developed a Keystone Arts and Heritage Plan, and our first ever Heritage Master Plan called our Singapore Heritage Plan was launched in 2019 and is co-created with the heritage and museum communities to infuse heritage into everyday places and spaces and ground-up initiatives. We also have our Singapore Arts Plan, which is a 5-year blueprint that takes a whole ecosystem approach to boosting the art sectors, right? The creative agencies also work closely with each other and the Singapore Tourist Board to actually build a vibrant arts, design, and culture calendar throughout the year. So some of them will be like the Singapore Art Week, Singapore Design Week, Writers Festival, and other performance festivals as well. Our creative agencies also work collaboratively with the Ministry of Education to create exposure to arts, design, digital, and media for all students in the primary, secondary, and tertiary levels. And recently, we just announced our first University of the Arts, aimed at taking tertiary arts education to greater heights as well. But we are aware that the world has changed and a new post-pandemic landscape lies before us. So what lies ahead for the future of our creative economy? The answer will be built upon overcoming what we feel are current challenges and identifying and capitalizing on new opportunities. Creativity has always been intertwined with our national development. And in the speech the Prime Minister made in 2018, he says that Singapore is actually really a nation by design and nothing is natural or happen by itself. So really our historical challenges from which our creative mindset has grown, has remained. And as we have no hinterland or no natural resources or manpower, it leaves us with a way to think about how we're going to go ahead in the new post-pandemic world. Even before COVID-19, global developments like geopolitical tensions and digitalization have started to represent new challenges to our creative sector, which tends to be comprised of very small independent players like many of you all. In the design sector, for example, more than 90% of our firms are really small businesses with less than $1 million in yearly revenue. And at a poll last year with key design firms, we were told that the biggest impact of the pandemic has been cancelled or stalled contracts and reduced market demand. However, the next biggest impact reported by designers was accelerated innovation. And design firms were sharing with us that COVID has prompted new ways of engaging clients, new business models, new organizational structures, and new value offerings. Of course, one of the most significant areas of this innovation lies in digitalization, which the creative sectors have a big role to play in shaping by creating new human-centered experiences, strengthening community through compelling storytelling, and thus building new offerings and value propositions. And there's much upside left to be uncovered in the intersection of the creative sector and technology. And this can be done in two key ways, we feel. One, building a strong talent pipeline and new skills, especially leveraging technology. And the second is actually creating platforms for rapid prototyping and experimentation amongst creatives, technology, and business. What has happened actually is that agencies like the National Arts Council are setting up experimental opportunities through platforms like the new Arts and Tech Lab, which will allow arts practitioners to work closely with technologists on new projects and programs. And our council has actually recently pulled together a think piece on the future of design and digital, which actually outlines such new frontiers and opportunities. And we welcome your input, and you can access it through the QR code on the screen. From these examples, it's clear that the ingredients of success of the creative sector will lie deep in deeper collaborations across sectors. And for example, media working across performing arts, visual artists and illustrators working across design and interdisciplinary and partnership orientation models and borderless thinking. And this is also new for the industry to be able to work across silos for much more collaborative projects. Of course, the success of our ASEAN ecosystem is critical to our individual successes, and we want to set up and nurture talent flows, exchange of expertise, knowledge and skills, as well as collaborative opportunities for our creatives to succeed in other markets, working with other creatives. Singapore is designed by really, honestly, a number of contrasts, old and modern, diverse and unified, high-tech and urban city in the garden. And also being in ASEAN, the ability to be able to collaborate with our rich neighbors and a rich heritage. So although our domestic market is small, we really hope to collaborate and offer new value and test bed innovation with everyone. This year, we actually wish to build upon our close relationships through our UNESCO and ASEAN networks. And we really are welcoming new opportunities and partnerships. And we look forward to ensuing discussion and also excited about future possibilities with everyone. So thank you once again. And this is our website, and there's actually a lot of content that we have and programs. And please feel free to go on it and see what's meaningful. And if you need more information, please reach out to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mark, for sharing all these plan and also initiative by the Singapore to create the creative economies. We coming to the last presenter for this webinar, Dr. Krishna Panpeng. He's a full-time lecturer at the Faculty of Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University. He also a theater practitioner and actor trainer. His research interests cover intercultural theater and performance training, creativity development in higher education, and creative city in ASEAN. Dr. Krishna, I give the floor to you, please.
Thank you so much, Kun Pichaya, for the introduction. It's such an honor to be here and to be able to share about the creative industries in Thailand. First of all, I have to say that my standpoint will be slightly different from other representatives here today because I represent the academic community and not the government sector. So over the next 8 minutes, I'll be giving a little background into the history of creative industries in Thailand and some ideas for improvement. From the early 2000s, the concept of the creative economy has been proposed as an engine of growth that could strengthen Thailand's international competitiveness. Almost 2 decades have passed and Thailand still struggles to contextualize this concept in a Thai setting. From the timeline, you can see that creative economy initiatives in Thailand can be traced back to 2004. Unfortunately, with 2 military coups and ongoing political unrest, the implementation of creative economy policies has been continuously disrupted. 3 years ago, we began to see the government recognizing the potential of the creative economy, and the Creative Economy Agency, or CEA, was founded. This agency promotes partnerships between the public and the private sectors. The CEA was also key in supporting the city authorities of Bangkok and Sukhothai in the application of UNESCO Creative Cities. Both cities were named Creative City of Design and Creative City of Crafts and Folk Art, respectively, in 2019. This is a list of the government policies related to the creative economy. In the 11th National Economic and Social Development Plan, the 15 creative industries were identified, and the creative economy was considered a key element for social and economic development. In later policies, however, the focus was shifted away from the creative economy and towards the digital economy. The role of the creative economy was reduced significantly. These are the key actors for creative economy development today. On the left, you can see the government office and ministry responsible for policy development. The entities in the center, led by CEA, are responsible for implementation. On the right, we have international organizations who have been providing support to the CEA, as well as the private sectors and the communities with creative economy related projects. The creative industries are now grouped under these 5 categories: creative originals, creative content, creative services, creative goods, and related industries. So this gives insight into the way the Thai government thinks about the creative industries. And here you can see contribution of the creative industries to Thailand's GDP. It peaked in 2015 and has been decreasing since. So this correlates with the shift in the national strategy. And out of all the industries, cultural tourism contributed the most and Thai food came second. This is the data from 2018. But it's important to note that these 2 are only considered related industries and they make up 46% of the contribution. If we only look at the core creative industries and don't include the related industries, the total contribution to the GDP is actually less than 5%. The creative labor workforce only made up of around 1.5% of the total workforce in 2017. And the number of overall workforce, and especially in the craft industry, has been in decline ever since. In terms of achievements, after the CEA was established in 2018, we started to see concrete outcomes from the for progress. Thailand Creative District Network, or TCDN, and Design Week are some of the successful examples. The Thailand Creative District Network supports development of creative spaces in municipalities all over Thailand. CEA was also active in providing research to the city authorities of Bangkok and Sukhothai in the application of UNESCO Creative Cities. Chiang Mai Design Week has been organized annually since 2014. As for Bangkok, the Bangkok Design Week will be held next month for the fourth time. This annual event draws approximately 400,000 visitors each time. Chiang Mai has seen success in the Creative Chiang Mai initiative, which was established by the governor of Chiang Mai in 2010. This initiative promotes creativity and innovation through a wide range of events and activities, including the Design Week and creative mapping. The Creative Chiang Mai initiative is also responsible for Chiang Mai being appointed UNESCO Creative City of Crafts and Folk Art in 2015. Now I'm going to move on to the current challenges and recommendations. Based on the research I conducted between 2018 to 2020, as well as journal articles and UNESCO reports, 3 major challenges can be identified as follows. First, political instability. As mentioned earlier, the focus of the national strategy is now on the digital economy. The creative economy has been reduced to a supporting role. And with ongoing political instability, any shifts in strategy could affect the funding. Second, lack of understanding of cultural and creative industries. In Thai society, culture is viewed as something to be preserved. The link has not yet been made between culture and the creative economy. Cultural tourism and Thai food are considered related industries and not core creative industries. By factoring them into contributions to GDP, it misrepresents the reality. Third, new media and the changing digital landscape. As we all know, the media landscape has been changing rapidly, and COVID-19 has accelerated the adoption of digital media. This provides more opportunity for the software industries, while broadcasting, performing arts, TV, and film are forced to adapt in order to survive. And these are my recommendations for sustainable development. As for the recommendations, they can be divided into 2 areas, policy and people. For policy, the government needs to strengthen long-term strategy and provide consistent funding to the creative industries. CEA as a government agency has to develop reliable methods of measuring the true contribution of the creative industries to GDP. For people-related suggestions for both the public and the private sectors, skills for creative workers have to be enhanced to keep up with the global advancement of technology. And we need to strengthen everyone's involvement in creative economy projects. The Creative Chiang Mai initiative is a role model in this regard. So thank you so much for your time today. I'm looking forward to discussing further how ASEAN countries can work together to build a creative economy for sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Krishna, for sharing us the Thailand experience and how they combine the creativity with the original industry and how to add the value to that, and also a policy recommendation to the policymakers. Next, we move on to the panel discussion and open forums. Because we're running out a little bit of the time, I would like just to ask for your permission to cut it off for only 15 minutes. I give the floor to my colleague from ASEAN Secretariat, Dr. Siosen, to be the moderator for this session. Dr. Erika Siosen, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, since we received a lot of questions actually at the Q&A box, we've selected a couple of them, and some of the questions we will direct to all of the speakers, some of them to specific speakers, so we can address a couple more. I think one of the interesting questions that we found here is how can we include the youth population in creative economic activities during the pandemic? I believe that question is from Anwar Hossein Buyan. Hopefully I said your name correctly. So if I can ask this question to all of our speakers, how can we include the youth in creative economic? especially I think many of our participants are really coming from the youth sector. If I may ask Nakajima Sensei to begin.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for interesting question. And youth is, of course, very important, part of this creative industrial development. And of course, because, new ideas, creative ideas come, generally come from young people. So yeah, from the observation from Japan, there has been some efforts in educating youth. And of course, educating creativity is kind of basically have a, two sides. I mean, if you educate too much, then it will lose creativity. But a couple of programs like, for example, I know some local government has initiatives on, kind of having a seminar for like programming for youth, like because the digital knowledge and digital ability is becoming very important in creative economy. So yeah, definitely youth would be a very important part. And part of that, the one way the policy can enhance uh, the the possibility for creative economic development would be to providing different educational programs, but of course not to like a dampen creativity, but maybe programming or even competition for like white hackers competition has been really popular. So these kind of engagement would be very important. And if government are to involve in this, maybe providing money for innovative program would be one way we could incorporate youth into healthy development of creative economic activities. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nakajima Sensei. Anyone else from our panelists like to address this question? Yes, Mr. Paulo, please.
Yes, I'd like to just respond to it in two ways, and it's really a very tough question. On the one hand, and I'm really basing this on the chart that I shared earlier, clearly creatives and especially young people who are very much into, let's say, the digital or digitized part of the creative economy, they remain to be very, very relevant and switched on. And they're seeing now, the rise of new digital platforms, and they're very engaged and they know how to monetize. And I think this part, they will reinvent and they will create a new models of creative economy that are quite different. The sector that I honestly worry about are the arts, and the arts that are non-digital in nature, in their consumption, their distribution, their business model, etc. It would be very tough now for a young student who is enrolled or thinking of enrolling in the arts, in the fine arts, to convince their parents that this is a sustainable profession, because throughout the business cases that you see right now, it's the one that's completely devastated. There are models coming up, new technologies like the non-fungible tokens, etc., which promises, at least for the digitized arts, to be a new model going forward. But all I can really say for the youth is, keep going, keep creating, but really work on your digital skills and work also on understanding how to monetize your digital and creative skills. And that's all I can say at this stage. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me ask first Joshua and then Mr. Mark, please.
Oh, thank you very much. Just to add to that, what we've seen with the youth is they're so dynamic and they change very rapidly. And what we've seen recently is the way they collaborate between sectors. We've seen architect and music together. This hasn't happened before, but this young generation, they're just so fluid. So one of the key issue that the Indonesian government now encourage is and empowering is to have more and more collaboration. So it's less and less competition in the youth. So the youth in Indonesia now feels that collaboration is the new competition. It's like, no, we don't need to compete, we have to collaborate. So this spirit, this new positive way is part of our program to involve the youth within developing the creative sector. Just to add that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, just want to add to that. I think to kind of Paolo's point about, I think the arts and how they can be relevant in a digital economy, is that's actually a real issue. I think there's been a lot of incentive to just get people to put it online and all that. But to your point, people are not willing to pay. And really, what is the business model for in a sort of non face-to-face kind of environment for the arts? So that's something that's grappling with. I think just about the youth, I think a lot of it, to Joshua's point, is also about, I think they want to collaborate. So I think for us, it's really how do you create, well, for us, how do we create certain programs to actually incentivize it? We actually have, just now I showed there's one around the art tech lab. There's another program we started last year called the Good Design Research, which basically provides a little bit of a grant money for young designers or young creatives who actually do research work that is usually they'll have to self-fund. And I think it invites collaborations, and really, as long as it's in pursuing something that would deepen their understanding on something, we want to incentivize that. And then the last one is really our National Design Center. Last year, because we had to close the building due to COVID, it actually brought us to a lot more online content, but we use that actually as a way to just educate people about the latest things. So like you said, non-fungible tokens, how do you use digitalization? A lot of these things, I think it's just taking what the latest is and being able to provide the information, because young people will hopefully just run with it themselves.
Thank you very much for those insightful feedback. Okay, since we are running out of time, let me ask one more question from the Q&A box. Because we have talked about the youth, then now let's talk about another vulnerable sector. How do you think can the creative economy benefit the informal sector in developing countries especially? So if I may direct this question to our case study speakers, Philippines and Indonesia and Thailand specifically. If anyone can begin, Dr. Pompeng, please.
Sorry, can you clarify the question one more time, please?
Yes, so how can the creative economy benefit the informal sector? Especially now that
Yes. So first of all, I think there has been some efforts in Thailand, especially in Bangkok, to draw the community to participate in the initiative. But what they have faced was that it's really hard to make them understand how the creative economy or the changes that will be implemented will benefit them. So I think the first step is to talk to them and then get to know them a little bit better, and then understand their way of life, and then get as much information as possible first before trying to give them something or implement something that they might not really, they might not find useful or beneficial for their way of life. So let me just start with that first, and then I'll let the other continue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Paulo?
Yeah, I'll give a very concrete example of Baguio City, which is one of the Philippine UNESCO creative cities. And fairly fresh, it was only included in the list in 2017. So when the pandemic hit, one of the things that became very apparent was that the local government did not have a database of the artists and artisans of Baguio City. They did not. So the first thing that really a creative economy at a very local level, at the city level, should do is make the creatives, both the artists and the artisans and the functional creators, known to the local city government through a database. It's the first and simplest thing to do. Whether they are informal or formally registered, they have to be known. And their contribution to, and what they do should be known to the city government. I think that's the first one. The second one, and it's a policy push by the Baguio Arts and Crafts Collective, is that the first supporter of the arts and crafts should really be the government, and not as a dole out, simply through procurement. You know, that when the government needs a design or needs work to be done, contact the local artists and pay them fairly for it. Because sometimes they said that, okay, you contribute and that's your donation and we'll pay you with a packed lunch. And that's not fair. And that's where the government, especially if they've been a designated creative city, should allocate a fund, and it's a procurement. It's not an endowment or a freebie. It's procurement to either beautify sections of the city or to design certain things, etc. And that's where really things can start to move. Know the sector, and knowing the sector means really database, have a really concrete database of who the people are, what they do, what their output is, and then allocate for procurement of design and craft work from the sector. And then let the private sector also know, and then provide market making initiatives for them, crafts markets, etc. So those are the small things that can happen, and it's being done by several of our ASEAN colleagues in their different creative cities. So I believe that small things like that are the ones that matter most.
Yes, definitely agree. Thank you very much. Anybody? If not, then I will ask one more question before we end. Yes, Pa Joshua, please.
I think the the creative sector is the answer for many of the what you call the informal sector. That's why creative industry mostly actually built of informal sectors. What I'm trying to say is this: creative industry is one of offering inclusivity. As an example, in a prison, there's a program towards a prisoner, right? They're probably the most informal sector, but they can actually start earning, making a living through doing creative activities. That's just an example of how creative sectors is actually can embrace the informal sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to ask just one last question. I would like to specifically address this to Dr. Upalat and to Dr. Nakajima, but anyone, of course, can answer. What are the negative impacts of digitalization on creative economy, especially when we talk about cultural sensitivities, intellectual property rights? Perhaps Nakajima Sensei and Dr. Upalat can give us some thoughts, and then our case study speakers can add more.
All right, yeah, so that's also a very important question. And I think one point, maybe 2 points, and one point would be, again, when we talk about creative economy, many people just think that as just a general digitalized economy. But as Paolo and other presenters talked about, there are much more richer, areas of creative economy, like performing arts, live arts, small theaters for like art house cinema, coming from very interesting, I like the films from Southeast Asia, like a Thai film, very interesting. So these kind of not only digitalized part would be also very important. So again, these kind of digital divide, we need to take like really think about how to provide support for that. Okay, and yeah, maybe I will pass the mic to Upalat, because just in the interest of time, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much for the question. So actually, I also agree with Dr. Nakashima about this digital divide. And I also agree with Dr. Krishna that actually, when we talk about creative industry, about culture, it's not mean that we should just preserve the culture. Like culture means something that we should, adapt and adopt it over time. So that's why I think, of course, digitalization can have some negative impact on creative industry, like in terms of digital divide that Dr. Nakajima was just saying. But actually, digitalization can also promote traditional performance or traditional cultures as well. So I think we have to really balance between these pros and cons of the digitalization.
Thank you very much. Any other response from our panel before we end the Q&A?
Maybe just one more point. So again, as creative industry become digitalized, of course, other issue, we probably don't have time to talk about is how government or maybe industry can regulate like a digital spaces. And again, that would be very important challenge we need to think about. And SNS, very good. I mean, creativity by using digital technology, that's very good. But how can we balance the maybe freedom of expression, cultural diversity, and also, again, crimes in these digital spaces, maybe cyberbullying, these issues are also becoming very important. So again, it's not all rosy. There are many challenges for industries, academics, and also government to really, trying to enhance the good part, good potential of the digital economy. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for those insightful feedback from our panelists. Now I hand it back to Pichaya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Erica, and thank you for all the presenter for this section. It's very fruitful discussion and also very comprehensive presentation. Too bad we don't have more time for that, but please be informed that all the presentation material today will be posted on the ADBI website so that you can catch up on it. We coming to the last section of this webinar, the recommendation and ways forward. I would like to introduce my colleague from ASEAN Secretariat, Mr. Jonathan Tan. He is the head of the Culture and Information Division under the Sustainable Development Directorate, ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community Department at the ASEAN Secretariat. He has over a decade of professional experience in international affairs when he was worked in the government service of Singapore, including the Foreign Service and Central Bank. So Jonathan, I give the floor to you for some recommendation and maybe some wrap up.
Thank you very much, Pichaya. It's good to see you. Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's good. I would like to take this opportunity to offer a broader perspective and highlight 4 points of observations, and in particular, what ASEAN is doing with regards to forging the way forward at the strategic level in the promotion and development of the creative economy. So if can move to the next slide. The first point I would like to make here is that I think, as we have heard from the panelists here, almost all the economic sectors have been hit hard by the pandemic, but I would say that some factors have made it very challenging, especially for the creative industries. And this is actually also alluded to by the panelists, some of the panelists earlier. For one, the creative sector is often seen as an extra, right? The other point is, of course, that is characterized by a high number of self-employed freelancers and all. And I think with the lockdown that we experienced since last year, as a result of the onset of the COVID pandemic, many creatives have actually turned to the internet, but that has also put them in a difficult place to recover from, because many of them work for free or at less than what they used to earn. And I think that, for example, Mr. Paulo has, the panelist has earlier alluded to as well, that it is one thing to go online to capitalize on digital technologies, but it's another thing that we are able to monetize it in a sustainable way, especially for the culture and the arts sector. So in this regard, in ASEAN, we are cognizant of these challenges, and we have therefore put in place the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, to which we are aware of the pandemic impacts on the sector and has identified the creative economy sector as an important one that requires help for recovery, and at the same time will be an important sector to assist in the recovery of the ASEAN economy as well. So if you would like to find out more information about the ACRF, the QR code is that embedded on the slide there. If I may just move on to my second point, I would like to share that at the regional level, we are undertaking some discussions to further promote and develop the CE sector going forward. But given the multitude of stakeholders involved in the sector, it is also taking us some time to scope the mandates and identify the stakeholders within the ASEAN regional ambit. But we are certainly looking at exploring the idea of establishing a cross-sectoral regional mechanism to foster greater regional cooperation in the creative economy sector, and are keenly aware of the need to build and bring in the right and conducive ecosystem, which I think a number of the panelists has also alluded to, especially spanning areas from IPR, digital transformation, governance, culture and arts, information and media sectors, education, among others. Moving on to my third point, I would like to highlight here also that we need to better position and articulate the creative economy as having an important role to play in promoting human and sustainable developments. And here I'm not referring only to human capital development, but also how the creative economy can create and contribute to greater well-being and uplift the quality of life for people in the region. So for example, how appreciating diverse culture, music, or films can promote mental and physical well-beings, deepens appreciation for multiculturalism and diversity, and building regional solidarity, as well as to promote a culture of peace and intercultural understanding. So to this end, we would like to also position the development of creative economy as an important upstream effort to inculcate the ASEAN culture of prevention, primarily to promote the well-being and uplift the quality of lives of ASEAN people. Moving on to my last point, I would like to make, with regards to the way forward, is to underscore the relevance of addressing a fundamental questions. And I think that our panelists have likewise tried to address this question here, which is, what is creative economy? I think that, as some of you are aware, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD for short, is currently soliciting views from experts globally and regionally to refine the definitions of the CE, recognizing the usefulness of global consensus on a clear definition of creative economy, so that matrix can be put in place to measure the efficacy and true value of the creative economy sector. Likewise, ASEAN experts are participating in this discussion. And within ASEAN, we are also undertaking some discussions in terms of scoping the mandates and defining, the creative economy as the basis for fostering greater regional cooperation in this sector in ASEAN. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And before we end this section, I would like just to spend a couple of minutes to put some wrap up for this webinar by putting on the policy recommendation from already presented together to the audience. So next slide, please. So as we know, to build up the creative economy for sustainable development, particularly amid this full industrial revolution, there's three focus areas that we would like just to turn your attention on. And so, of course, everybody talking about the adoption of digitalization, which this recommendation would include technology innovation and R&D investment, this, as well as to strengthen the ICT infrastructure. These two are just to make sure and to ensure that there's a digital readiness for the country and the people in the countries, as well as we see the degree of digital transformation. So the digital readiness is something that's really an issue that had to be tackled by all the government through to create these creative economies. And then the next focus is to measuring the talent, and definitely we have heard about educational reforms and how to build the creative economy and put in this context in the school curriculum to ensure the creativity among the youth and also the student, and moving forward to older people, and also the digital lesson for digitalization to get people familiarized, as well as to equip people for digital technology. The niche market and national branding is something that's very important that we have to, we can see when we're developing the creative economies, as well as to ensure that this has to be supported legally, and also to motivating the entrepreneur to help developing the new creative products. The IPR system has to be enforced and also strengthened in the economy. Last but not least is the partnership and the network that for knowledge and information sharing, as well as just to see the recognition of the cultural diversity, not only within the country, but also across the regions. This is also to promote the demand for the creative products, as well as Singapore mentioned in one of their initiatives, the city partnership is very important to promote the creative economy and creative industry. So with all this together, as I think we have seen the sample from many countries that the comprehensive policy framework, as well as the roadmap for development of creative economy are required at the national level as well as the regional level. So the next slide, please. So when in response to the challenges of the COVID-19, the post-COVID-19 strategy has been already presented. I summarize into 3 points. The adoption of digitalization, definitely during this time, we couldn't deny that this is one of the key drivers for the economy and will be in the future too. To provide the financial liquidity to support SME and MSME, as well as creative entrepreneurs who need help during this crisis time. Last but not least, market expansion that can be done through the e-commerce or the uses of digital platform. So that as the sum up of everything, and as we know, there's so much potential in this industry that could help boost economic growth as well as sustainable development. So just to reiterate again, inclusive and also comprehensive policy design definitely needed at national and regional level. So with on that note, I would like just to thank everyone, the presenter, also our co-organizer ASEAN Secretariat to help us organize this fruitful webinar. And we hope that with this knowledge sharing and also potentially we will have the knowledge product later on posted in the ADBI website as well as the ASEAN Secretariat website could help you to nurture the talent and also create a creative economy for sustainable development later on. Before we close this session, I also like to encourage all the attendees and also the participants that we will send out the survey for this event. So it would be appreciated for you just to answer the survey so that we know about your satisfaction of the event as well as how to improve the event in the future for ADBI. And we hope just to collaborate with ASEAN Secretariat in the future. Before we end this program, I would like just to take this opportunity to announce our upcoming event, the ADB annual meeting in 2021. This is the 54th annual meeting. This will happen from 3rd to 5th of May. We will have a series of webinars that tackle the various challenges faced by the region. This year, an overall theme is a collaboration for resilience of green recovery. And you and also as well as your your network can register via the website of the am2021.adb.org to get more information and regular updates and summaries. You can also get the information at the adb.org or any of the ADB social media channel. And just in one of the events that are organized by the ADBI. Next slide, please. We have this event. The webinar as organized as a satellite of the ADB annual meeting is called the Climate Change and Sovereign Risk that will happen on the 5th of May. And the times as from 3 p.m. to 4:30 Manila time and 4 p.m. to 5:30 Tokyo time. We have an honorable to welcome the Vice President of the ADB, Miss Ingrid Van Vee. He's the Vice President of the Finance and Risk Management. And also the panelists in this session will be from OECD, ASEAN countries, and also other countries in Asia and the Pacific. So thank you so much, everyone, for sparing your more time and to stay with us until the end of the webinar. And we look forward to welcoming you again in our next event. And have a lovely evening or have a lovely days ahead. Thank you very much.